Tonight, our wettest year ever. Sydney smashes the rainfall record, the constant deluge, now the biggest annual downpour since we started taking count more than 160 years ago. First arrest, a man taken into custody in Sydney, accused of using data stolen from Optus customers in a blackmail scam. Drug-induced psychosis, 20 years jail for a university student who was high on LSD when he killed his girlfriend, believing she was a demon. Cold case murder mystery, who killed a Lightning Ridge opal miner and who in the close-knit outback town is keeping the deadly secret. The evidence which brought Brittany Higgins to tears, vision of the moment she entered Parliament House, played to the court at the trial of her alleged rapist. Cycle lane lunacy, we revealed the expensive bungle over a city bike path, which has cost taxpayers millions of dollars. And it'll be wet, it will be wild, and a weekend like no other. We are on the hill as fans get set to roar Bathurst to life.
This is 10 News First Sydney with Sandra Sully.
Good evening. It's probably no surprise since we seem to wake up almost every day to rain, rain and more rain. But today, Sydney passed the official mark that puts 2022 in the history books as our wettest year since we started keeping score. That was way back in 1850. And the sad news is it's only early October and there's much more rain to come.
Waterloo living up to its name. Flash flooding, waterlogging streets as a dumping of rain soaked Sydney. More than 100 millimetres falling in areas of the state already inundated by water, with more to come.
Saturday is likely to be our danger day for Sydney and surrounding areas.
It's now officially Sydney's wettest year in 164 years of records, smashing the 1950 yearly rainfall total of 2,194 millimetres, and it's only October. The city's popular night noodle markets turned soggy, cancelled last night and tonight. The washout in the west causing river rapids at Parramatta Wharf as the deluge collected debris, while campers at the Bathurst 1000 have had to make friends with mud.
So they've come with wet weather gear, they're all battened down the hatches.
In the past 24 hours, the SES has received 367 calls for help and have carried out 5 flood rescues, delivering supplies to rural areas which have been isolated for weeks.
Some places in the far west of the state have already observed rainfall about 2 to 3 times what they typically see in the month of October. So this is quite significant.
There are 45 flood warnings current across New South Wales, with the areas around Forbes, Bathurst, Gunnedah and Warren of most concern. Locals say the Hawkesbury River here at Richmond has risen 3 metres just this morning, with the Nepean River also on flood watch for minor to moderate flooding, but levels aren't expected to reach those seen earlier this year. The government's plans to raise Warragamba Dam trashed by locals who have been flooded 4 times in 18 months.
Community here are outraged,
saying their pleas have been ignored.
It would make much more sense to pre-release water slowly in a controlled manner.
500 SES volunteers are preparing for a weekend of heavy rain, flash flooding and damaging winds, police wanting to avoid any further tragedies.
Those families are traumatised and extended communities are traumatised.
Please make sensible decisions.
As the third consecutive La Niña unleashes its fury. Sarah Naven for 10 News First.
For more now on this unfolding weather situation, Paris Martin joins me. Paris, how much longer do we need to duck and weave this crazy weather?
Well, Sandra, Sydney can expect a bit of a lull tomorrow, but don't be fooled. More wet weather is on the way for the weekend. Now, this is how today's record-breaking day of rain looked on the radar. So we had showers through the morning, pretty evenly spaced and also stretching out into Sydney's west too. Then towards midday, the heavy falls formed this line along the coast, and this is when Sydney really got bad. battered. We received quadruple what was initially forecast for Sydney Observatory Hill. Now, this rain gauge was the one that set that wettest year record in 1950. So at 9 a.m, we needed 36 millimetres to match it, and well, we well and truly passed it. It was around 1 p.m. we beat that record. You can see there were also significant falls around the airport with 94 millimetres, also in Cronulla and in the Illawarra at Mount Pleasant in Wollongong. So we've smashed through the record year of rain today, and there is plenty more on the horizon. So Sandra, I'll be back with those details shortly.
All right, thank you, Paris. Federal police investigating the Optus data breach have made their first arrest, a teenager who they allege tried to blackmail customers whose data was leaked on the internet. But it was far from being an elaborate scam. Police claimed that he demanded money be paid into a bank account owned by his younger brother.
This 19-year-old being walked from his Sydney home this morning isn't the Optus hacker, but federal police allege he pretended to be in scam text messages sent to 93 of the telco's 10,000 customers whose data was published online.
And we would allege that the offender was working their way through the list.
The message it's claimed he sent reads in part, Optus has not responded to our demand of the $1 million ransom. As such, your information will be sold and used for fraudulent activity within 2 days or until a payment of $2,000 is made. His undoing may have been the bank account listed, which police allege belongs to his younger brother.
So the text messages started to be sent last week, and we would allege would have continued had we have not taken the action that we took today.
The accused scammer could face up to 10 years in jail if he's convicted. The good news, it appears no one who received the text message fell for it, so no money was transferred. The bad news, it's proof victims of the Optus hack are vulnerable.
And we are aggressively pursuing all lines of inquiry to identify those behind the attack.
As the government proposes new laws
to try and reduce the impact of this data breach.
Empowering all telcos to hand over the driver's licences, passports and Medicare numbers of hacked customers to financial institutions and the government to stop their identities being stolen.
And they need to ensure that the information that they get is destroyed when it's no longer required.
A protection many Optus customers wish had been afforded to their data. Daniel Sutton for 10 News First.
A Maitland man who murdered his young girlfriend because he thought she was a demon has been jailed for at least 13 years. Jordan Brodie Miller never denied killing Emerald Wardle, but argued he was suffering from mental illness at the time due to his illicit drug use.
Holding sunflowers for their ray of sunshine, Emerald Wardle's family and friends arrived at court to learn her killer's fate.
Emerald was the most amazing young, vibrant woman.
Jordan Brodie Miller was today sentenced to 20 years in jail for strangling his 18-year-old girlfriend to death in 2020. He'll spend at least 13 years behind bars.
I think a number isn't necessarily important because it's accountability, and that's what's happened here.
Miller had already admitted to killing Ms. Wardle. At the time, he thought she was a demon and he was under a curse. He later pleaded not guilty to murder, claiming he'd been suffering from a drug-induced psychosis caused by cannabis and LSD. But a jury rejected claims his actions were caused by undiagnosed schizophrenia. The simple reality of this case, as sad and tragic as it is that which occurred happened because the offender took drugs, Justice Kavanagh said during sentencing. The court was also read a letter written by Miller for his girlfriend's family. I loved Emerald, it said. It breaks my heart every day knowing she is gone. I can only describe it as living in a nightmare that I can never awake from.
2 young lives have been ruined, really, and 2 families have a lifetime impact.
Miller will be 33 when he becomes eligible for parole. The judge acknowledged he is remorseful for what he's done, but told the court taking drugs is never an excuse for violent conduct. Miller can apply for release in 2033.
We want to now start the healing process where we can celebrate her young life.
Taylor Ryan for 10 News First.
A reward for information into the death of a man in northwestern New South Wales almost 30 years ago has now been increased to $500,000. 40-year-old Paul Murray was last seen alive by a Lightning Ridge local who had driven him outside of town on Sunday, March 19, 1995. Mr Murray's family reported him missing a week later. His body was eventually found in scrub by two graziers.
Put yourself in our position. 28 years of grief, 28 years of tears. We adored our brother.
Mr Murray's family described him as a generous person who would always help community members in need. Anyone with information is urged to contact Crime Stoppers. Brittany Higgins has been cross-examined by her accused rapist's lawyers who say they have found discrepancies in the timelines over a white dress that she says she stored under her bed for 6 months. Higgins was noticeably upset in court today as she was played security video of her entering Parliament House on the night of the alleged assault.
Brittany Higgins wept from the witness box as she relived the night of her alleged rape, watching herself struggle to put her shoes back on as she passed through Parliament security. The jury watched on as Mr Lerman signed the pair into Parliament. The court also saw photos of the couch on which she alleges Mr Lerman raped her, asked to explain how her legs were placed when she woke up. Open. I was fully exposed. My left leg was opened and pinned down. My right leg was pinned up on the side. The white dress Ms Higgins was wearing on the night was handed to police some 2 years later, telling the court, I kept it under my bed in a plastic bag for a good 6 months, untouched, uncleaned. The defence questioned Ms Higgins' account under cross-examination, showing a photo from May 15, 2019 of Ms Higgins wearing the dress. She told Steve Wybrow she was wrong about the timing. When pressed on why she wore it after the alleged assault, she said she was reclaiming her agency. On April 1st, Ms Higgins met with Minister Linda Reynolds and her then Chief of Staff Fiona Brown in the Minister's office. It's during this meeting she says the Minister apologised to her and showed some general empathy. She alleges the conversation then moved to the election and what Ms Higgins intended to do about the allegation. Ms Higgins told the court, my interpretation of that was that if I raised it with police, there were going to be problems. Asked what those problems could be, she said this could theoretically be perceived in the broader public sense as a political problem for the Liberal Party with women. On the 8th of April, Ms Higgins met with the Sexual Assault Unit in Canberra. The Prime Minister called the federal election on the 11th of April. That Saturday, the 13th, Brittany Higgins wrote to police informing them she would not be proceeding with her complaint against Mr Lerman. The court heard this was because it became really apparent my job was on the line, so I towed the party line. After the election, she accepted a job in Minister Michaelia Cash's office. She quit in January 2021. Under cross-examination, Ms Higgins was accused of using 2 media interviews in February 2021 to ruin the Liberal Party. She told the court that wasn't her intention, that she had loved the Liberal Party. A recording was played in which her partner David Shiraz says Ms Higgins picked the timeline because it would be a mess for the Liberal Party. She told the court that doesn't represent my view, going on to say it actually became a battle between 2 journalists over who would get the exclusive. Mr Lerman has pleaded not guilty. Stella Todorovic for 10 News First.
Fans at Mount Panorama are setting themselves up for whatever the weather can throw at them. Some tents have already failed the weather resistance test, but the local mayor says anyone reconsidering travelling to Bathurst should just come along and have some fun.
It's a bit wet underfoot at Mount Panorama. The place is pretty much soaked, and with a 100% chance of rain for the next 3 days, it's best to be prepared.
Excess rainfall, that could mean extra road closures, potentially evacuations, but at this point in time, we're really just gauging it day by day.
The mayor says the mountain can take it if you can.
Going back years and years ago, we did have a lot of problem with water, but at the moment, with all the drainage, it can take a lot more.
This year, soaking it all in has a whole extra meaning for the campers.
Just a swamp at the moment. What do you do? Our tent that's been here 4 times before decided to leak completely, so everything in the tent got wet. The fly leaked through the tent, the gazebo leaked through on everything, so everything got replaced this morning.
But you're still here?
Not leaving.
First 3 days I got sunburnt, and yesterday we got drenched.
We are in Rev Head heaven, but it could turn into camping hell if this weather event does hit Mount Panorama. It doesn't seem to face Supercars fans though. They're throwing themselves into the week with their usual enthusiasm.
Yeah, this is only this morning's effort, so yeah, we'll try and get a bit better.
And if you want to get extreme, we've got our boogie board on site as well. Caution, wet floor.
The fires are lit, the wood chips delivered. Time to sit back and see what the mountain throws at us this year.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers.
Vince Hammerly for 10 News First.
And of course, we'll have plenty more on the action from Mount Panorama a little later in tonight's bulletin. Coming up next, though, the voice recognition app, which could detect one of our most debilitating diseases in just seconds. Also, how's the air up there? Australia's new weather station to deliver forecasts for a new frontier. Joe Biden caught in an awkward hot mic gaffe as the tough-talking president let slip in Florida. And a mystery of the deep finally uncovered, a 100-year-old shipwreck discovered right off our coast.
To know why you should switch to SmartPay EFTPOS, ask yourself, why are you still paying the bank merchant fees when you can pay zero with us? Pay zero, save thousands. Smart. Visit SmartPay and switch to zero-cost EFTPOS.
Good evening. It's very wet and slippery on the roads tonight, so drive to the conditions and take it easy. Heavy rain has caused flooding around Sydney, so remember to avoid driving through the floodwaters. Through Exford Falls, flooding has the Wakehurst Parkway closed in both directions between the Academy of Sport and Dreadnought Road. Oxford Falls Road is also closed in both directions. Same story through Alexandria. I'm Hayley Steele in the SmartPay Traffic Centre.
Australian researchers have developed a voice screening app which detects Parkinson's disease in just 10 seconds. Now, the technology uses artificial intelligence to pick up any early signs by analysing a person's voice.
It sounds like a voice lesson. But these noises can detect Parkinson's disease.
Voice has been known to get affected among Parkinson's disease patients for a very long time, and it is one of the early signs of the disease.
Researchers at RMIT developed the groundbreaking app. It records 3 specific noises such as and ah and runs it through artificial intelligence, turning around a result in just 10 seconds.
The AI is able to pick up the differences between the disease and the non-disease.
Steve Sheamer was diagnosed with Parkinson's at just 40 years old.
I had a problem with my left side. I also started getting tremors about 12 or 18 months before I was actually diagnosed.
He says an app like this would have helped him get his diagnosis sooner.
The sooner you know that you've got the condition, the quicker you can make changes to your lifestyle.
It picks up on any early signs of the disease, even if the patient isn't aware they have it.
Once the person is detected, they can have the medication started, they can have other treatments started.
The app has been trialled and tested to the point where researchers are ready to start clinical trials. But to do so, they need funding and neurologists to help collect data. Once it's approved by the Therapeutic Goods Association, it can be rolled out to GP clinics, with the goal for doctors to use it as part of their regular checkups. Amber Johnston for 10 News First.
It is the final frontier of weather forecasting, and it is out of this world. Australia's first dedicated space weather centre has opened in Adelaide, keeping an eye on stellar events with the potential to disrupt everything from national security to our everyday lives.
Welcome to the Weather Bureau's Guide to the Galaxy.
Australia's been monitoring space weather since the late 1940s. The difference is the capability that this new centre brings.
This leading-edge centre aims to predict events on the sun like solar flares with the potential to wreak havoc with our everyday lives on Earth, 150 million kilometres away.
Could cause currents to go through the Earth and through our power systems, which may end up in a blackout. It will impact satellites, so we use satellites for communication, for phone calls.
The data will be a game changer for key industries which rely on satellite technology such as agriculture, mining and defence.
Disruptions caused by solar flares are much more critical in today's security environment than they might have been 40 or 50 years ago.
As industry experts continue to gravitate to SA, the centre will be based at Adelaide's Space Agency hub, Lot 14.
So we are extremely happy to be the home of yet another space-related centre. They're very, very welcome here. We think this is creating an ecosystem around the space industry that is second to none.
The Bureau will work alongside 80 other industry agencies in Adelaide as it delivers 24/7 space weather forecasting and warning services.
We are ensuring that people are able to be prepared for significant space weather event. A very major event is few and far between, but when they do occur, we want to make sure that industries are able to respond to this.
Tiffany Warren for 10 News First.
Up next, kamikaze drones fall near Kyiv, leaving a devastating aftermath. Also, the moment a Russian cosmonaut launches into space from US soil for the first time in 20 years. And Kate makes her first solo public engagement as the Princess of Wales. But first, it's time to get a quick look at today's weather. Here's Paris with the latest.
Hello again. We've already spoken about some rainfall totals across Sydney. I'll update you again a bit later in the bulletin. This is how those falls looked on the radar as they rolled across the city today. You can see the state's west was mostly spared from the heavier stuff. It was the coast's turn to cop it. Not only was it wet, but temperatures in the city were also well below average. So Sydney hit a top of 16 around 3 this afternoon. For context, that's about 6 degrees below the average for this time of year. That cool maximum follows the early morning low of 14 degrees. Around the state today, temperatures were also generally below average. The only exception was some of the towns in the west. Broken Hill, 27 degrees, Dubbo 20 and Newcastle there 19. And around the suburbs of Sydney today, Penrith hit a top of 20 degrees. We had 19 in Campbelltown and 18 in Bankstown and Parramatta. But I'll be back with more on this unfolding weather situation in about half an hour. Don't go anywhere. See you then.
Russia has used so-called kamikaze drones to bomb a town just 2 hours from the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. The strike comes as Moscow's weakened forces struggle against a surging Ukrainian military, now gaining more ground in the country's east. Europe correspondent John Paul Gonzo has more.
It is a video that would infuriate Vladimir Putin. In a field in Kherson, a single tank bearing a white flag is surrounded by soldiers. It isn't Ukrainian forces surrendering, but Russians. With their hands in the air, Moscow's troops climb out of the tank and lay down their weapons. Kyiv's counter-offensive has been gaining momentum, with the Russian army driven out of villages. 3 more settlements have been retaken in Kherson, according to Volodymyr Zelensky. In Donetsk, the city of Liman has been liberated. From a soldier's body cam, you can see what's been left behind, including residents. There were tears from this woman, then a hug for the soldiers who pushed the enemy out. For a city so deeply scarred by Russian occupation, there is now hope of survival. But as areas are retaken, more evidence of terrible war crimes is emerging, including this so-called torture chamber. Ukraine's Ministry of Defence claims people were buried alive here, also uncovered a box of gold dentures said to be extracted from prisoners held at the site.
In every town, in every village, we found new evidences of war crimes committed by Russian Federation.
Despite a weakened military, Russia's attacks continue. In a town near the capital, Kyiv, Moscow used kamikaze drones to cause mass destruction. There was roaring noise, piercing sound, this man said. I heard the first strike and saw the second. Children play in the debris from the blast, too young to understand a conflict they will spend years trying to recover from. John Paul Gonzo for 10 News First, London.
President Joe Biden has arrived in Florida to survey the damage from Hurricane Ian, but it was a hot mic incident that dominated headlines. After checking out the damage from the air, he met with the Governor Ron DeSantis for a briefing on the worst hit areas and what the state needs to recover. Following a news conference, the president then walked away with Fort Myers Beach Mayor Ray Murphy, and this exchange was caught.
Thanks for everything. Thanks for coming down. We appreciate it. I picked the food.
You raised some.
I was.
No one.
Yeah, goddamn right.
And you can't argue with your brothers outside the house.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right. Good to see you.
It is unclear what sparked the profanity. The death toll from Ian currently stands at 108, but both the Governor and emergency services have warned that toll could easily increase as the search for the missing continues. Actor Alec Baldwin has reached a settlement with the family of the cinematographer he accidentally shot and killed on a film set. Details of the deal are being kept under wraps, but it has been confirmed Helena Hutchins' partner Matthew Hutchins will become an executive producer on the film and share in the profits. But this settlement doesn't end Baldwin's potential legal trouble. Local authorities have said the details will not influence any decision to lay criminal charges. Protests against Iran's hardline rule on appearance have now spread to schools, with reports of hundreds of girls demonstrating against the regime. This video shows dozens of students shouting down a member of the Revolutionary Guard. Demonstrations are spreading and growing increasingly violent as young women demand an end to the hardline regulations. The cause is being taken up internationally too, with high-profile women, including actors and this EU delegate, cutting their hair in solidarity. Only days after pushing for peace in Ukraine on Twitter, Elon Musk's SpaceX company has sent its first Russian to the ISS. Anna Kakina is the first cosmonaut to launch from the US in 20 years and is one of a four-person team that blasted off from Florida's Kennedy Space Center for the International Space Station. The team will stay strapped into their Dragon capsule for about 20 hours before docking with the ISS. Back on Earth, the reusable Falcon booster also made another safe landing and will be taken back to base and recycled for the next launch. The new Princess of Wales has visited a maternity ward on her first solo engagement since the death of the Queen. On a rather grey day, Catherine arrived at the clinic in Surrey in a yellow dress. Some British media have described as a much-needed ray of sunshine. The mother of three toured the ward, giving words of reassurance to the new mums and dads, some of whom have only just been able to hold their premature babies. Catherine visited the hospital as part of her advocacy for early childhood research and development. Well, still to come, we've got the latest on this Thursday's top stories. Plus, from loose wheels to crash chaos, Mount Panorama already putting on quite the show ahead of an action-packed weekend. Around $17,000 a metre. It could be the most expensive bike lane in the country. 10 News First can reveal tonight the actual cost of building, demolishing and now rebuilding the College Street Cycleway. A senior state government minister admits that mistakes have been made in a saga which has stretched over a decade.
Forget King's Cross. Is this Sydney's Golden Mile, the College Street bike lane?
Bicycle, bicycle, bicycle. I want to ride my bicycle, bicycle.
650 metres that may as well have been paved with gold.
We really could have had the Transport Minister down here in College Street burning $100 bills. It would have had the same effect.
City Council built the North-South Cycleway in 2011 at a cost of $5 million. It quickly became one of the city's busiest, used by 2,000 cyclists every morning. But in 2013, the state government announced plans to make it a bus lane while it built the George Street light rail. Despite several large protests, cyclists couldn't save the College Street lane and it was controversially ripped up in 2015. We can now reveal that removal cost $1.9 million. Fast forward to late 2020 and plans emerged to bring it back. Now, under construction, the cost to rebuild it is $4 million, meaning by the time it finally reopens in the next few months, $10.9 million will have been spent on this one bike lane.
Probably makes it one of the most expensive cycleways ever established in Australia.
Peter McLean is CEO of Bicycle New South Wales, which fought for its return.
It shouldn't have been torn up in the first place. We've seen millions and millions of taxpayers' funds being wasted.
If I could turn back time, I would change things.
The state's current active transport minister agrees. Ripping it up was wrong.
That was a decision that shouldn't have been taken.
Its removal having both a financial and human cost.
And since that cycleway was removed, that the incidence of serious accidents involving cyclists increased, which is why putting that cycleway back has been a really important way of reducing congestion and keeping both motorists and cyclists safer.
To link with a planned bike lane on Oxford Street, it appears a lesson has finally been learnt.
Cyclists have been disrupted, motorists have been disrupted, and taxpayers have been ripped off.
Lachlan Kennedy for 10 News First.
It appears water has gone under the bridge in our relationship with the Solomon Islands, the leader of the Pacific nation today reaffirming his commitment to bilateral ties with Australia. Despite signing a security agreement with China, which stirred tensions in Canberra, a pledge came to not allow foreign military installations on the Solomon Islands. The Prime Minister, Sogavare, claims such a move would be undermining his country's national security and that of other Pacific nations. Jaleesa Apps is here now with the latest news in sport. And Jaleesa, gosh, the Panthers are copping plenty of flack after their back-to-back premiership wins.
Yeah, they certainly have. Sandra, they've been labelled arrogant, but tonight we hear from Nathan Cleary as he defends those controversial celebrations. Plus, he was once a staple in Australia's cricket side, but is Steve Smith's World Cup spot on shaky ground? And thrills and spills underway on a wet and wild Bathurst track.
Tonight's Sports Report is brought to you by PointsBet. Built different. Download the PointsBet app today.
Panthers captain Nathan Cleary has laughed off talk the dual premiership winners are arrogant. The star halfback is now in Kangaroos camp, preparing to battle his way into the 7 jersey for Australia.
Back-to-back premierships have the Panthers rightly gloating, but Nathan Cleary isn't impressed by talk. They're full of themselves.
I think it's been blown way out of proportion. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think a lot of it was tongue-in-cheek. I don't think it was meant to be, too disrespectful.
After their grand final win, James Fisher-Harris said, "Para are our sons." And Jerome Luai's social media posts, one he deleted that has him in hot water, the other, a comment Parramatta should call the Penrith boys daddy.
It's a character that the game needs. People enjoy watching him, whether they love him or hate him. People tune in to watch him play.
The only eel in the Kangaroos World Cup squad, Regan Campbell-Gillard, brushed it all off.
It's been said and whatnot, so they're entitled to their own opinion and to their own voice, so I might have to have a word with Yowie later.
As for calling any of the Panthers Cup stars daddy,
I'm making any comment.
Campbell-Gillard could only laugh at the organisers' decision to have players allocated numbers for the whole tournament. He'll wear number 6, but don't expect any Wally Lewis, Bobby Fulton or Darren Lockyer heroics.
If you look at all the famous number 6s that wore that jersey, put my name next to it, it's a pretty good laugh.
Cameron Munster will wear number 7, but it's Nathan Cleary who'll be fighting to unseat halfback Daly Cherry Evans.
Healthy competition. Obviously, Daly's a great player and he's proven that over a long period of time. He's obviously the incumbent as well, so yeah, it's healthy competition. I'm looking forward to just being able to work alongside him and learn off him as well.
Maybe even taking his spot. Bernard Cohen, 10 News First.
Steve Smith isn't panicking despite being left out of last night's lineup against the West Indies. But with no half-century in nearly 3 years, he's suddenly on the outer and struggling for answers.
Steve Smith sitting on the sideline isn't a sight Australian cricket's used to, but few players have learned to play a straight bat better than the controversial former captain, especially when peppered with questions on his place in the World Cup 11.
I have no idea. Not really sure. I wouldn't have a clue, to be honest with you. I don't really know, to be honest. I have no idea. We'll wait and see.
One thing he does know, his go-slow style of play may no longer fit the T20 mould as well as it once did, as he looks at new ways of reinventing himself.
I'm obviously not as strong and powerful as some of the other guys, but some wickets entail just good smart.
Cameron Green's non-inclusion in the squad remains a hot topic.
There's not too many people around the world that can hit it as far as him and bowl 145 k's an hour and be a weapon in the field as well.
Marcus Stoinis is the man most likely to be replaced should he not prove his fitness against England next week. But there's no love lost between the WA boys.
Cameron Green, he's like our little brother here over in Western Australia. I play club cricket with him whenever I do. That's only 2 times, but we're proud of him. He's got such a good future ahead of him.
Overnight, the Aussies limped to victory on the second last ball, despite 2 clearly rusty sides.
He was there in time. He just snatched at it at the last moment.
The former captain was more furious at the Gold Coast's no-show.
Oh, the crowd was disappointing. There wasn't many there, so we like playing in front of big crowds and entertaining as much as we can.
Here's hoping Brisbane's cricket lovers lob up tomorrow night. Ted Roker for 10 News First.
Well, Davison was quickest in the first practice session ahead of the Bathurst 1000. On a weekend, his team is celebrating its 1000th race. Quite a few scrapes and crashes happened throughout the day, including from some of the top guns.
It's always a test, even for the best, but we didn't expect this. Shane van Gisbergen giving his car a scrape at the top of the mountain.
Right up against the fence, bang! And that would normally ricochet itself straight across into that right-hand fence.
Yeah, it's tough. I just wanted to have a clean session 1, so I'm pretty pissed at myself for doing that, but car felt good.
Cam Waters, runner-up the last 2 times here, ran out of room heading into the straight.
Well, it's probably better that it happens now than on Sunday. I think Cam just exploring the limit of grip out there.
Quite the clean-up job once the car was unbeached. Anton De Pasquale may be out of miracles this week.
For De Pasquale, he's wiped the rear on the tyre. Wow. Oh, got away with that. That is ridiculous.
Will Davison was quickest in the morning session. Not lost on him the fact his team Dick Johnson Racing marks its 1000th race this weekend.
He loves his team like family. We're a family team, and you really feel that vibe amongst our group. So, we love this track. He loves this track, and it's a special one for the team and all our fans.
The man himself, Dick Johnson, gave us a glimpse of the future, taking in a few laps of Mount Panorama in a Gen 3 Mustang. Hot on his tail, Greg Murphy in a Chevrolet Camaro, which replaces Holden next year. A big fright in the Super 3 practice, Brendan Strong crashing heavily.
It's really late, really fast, and huge contact into that tyre barrier.
Thankfully, he was okay. Vince Hammerley for 10 News First.
The Sydney Kings are set to return home to Kudos Bank Arena tomorrow night for the first time this season, facing the Brisbane Bullets, who went down in their first round clash against the Perth Wildcats. The defending champions will be on high alert for superstar big man Aaron Baines.
He's an unbelievable basketball player, and he deserves all the accolades that's come to that guy, and I'm excited for it. He's a big, strong dude. I'm kind of scared to guard that dude, but I'm excited for the challenge as well, and it'll be good.
Cooks is familiar with Baines. The pair trained together in the Boomers camp ahead of the Tokyo Olympics. Sydney FC wants to make Allianz Stadium its fortress just like it used to be. The side has its team photo and first ever training session at the new venue today, set to face Melbourne Victory this Saturday night in the Big Blue. Coach Steve Corica says fans can expect a different looking lineup to last season.
We've obviously been working pre-season on how we're playing, and the new foreign boys will come into the side. But we still have a lot of players that have been here for a long time.
Of course, you can catch the Big Blue live and free on 10 Bold and Paramount Plus from 7 p.m. Saturday. And Postecoglou's Celtic is bottom of its Champions League group after a 3-1 loss to Leipzig.
That kind of changed the course of the game.
There were headaches for most of the shot blockers across Europe this morning. Copenhagen and Chelsea were also easy victors against AC Milan. It wasn't quite the Socceroos' 31-0 hammering against American Samoa when Archie Thompson scored 13 goals, but Australia's under-17s came close to the mark by sending 23 past the Northern Mariana Islands.
Through. Some early crossing chance. Haitley's in there. Irankunda too. And barely moments into the match, Nestori Irankunda already makes his mark.
Given the freezing conditions in Shepparton, both teams would have been happy for the mercy rule to be evoked and this game called off early, but for sticking it out, we'll give them our play of the day. Makes me excited for the A-League, Sandra.
I know, it's just about here.
Almost.
Indeed. All right, thanks to Lisa. See you soon. Up next, we have smashed the rainfall record. I'm sure you've heard, but how much more is still to come? Well, Paris is back with the latest on the weather.
Hello again. It's time now for an update on how the rain has progressed into the evening. The heaviest falls have basically formed this line along the coast and they've been pretty constant throughout the afternoon. This is the rain band that smashed Sydney's wettest year record and the totals just keep ticking up. We received more than quadruple what was initially forecast for Sydney Observatory Hill. You can see the falls were very significant around the airport too, with up to 96 millimetres today. Also in Cronulla and a bit further south in Wollongong too, with Mount Pleasant. Sydney will see a bit of a lull in the wet weather tonight before another trough moves through late Friday, causing a very wet weekend. And these falls have been forecast to be heavy. We're looking at up to 50 millimetres on Saturday, up to 70 millimetres in Sydney's west and roughly 35 on Sunday before that rain starts to clear off the coast. In terms of what's driving this wet weather, well, we do have a cold front. So this light blue spiky line, also this trough, the dotted green line above it, they are both pushing across the state. You can also see strong winds. These yellow arrows down here, they're circling away from a high pressure system in the Tasman Sea. Now these winds are bringing humid tropical air into the state and that humid air is colliding with these two systems, the trough and the front, and it's causing this next period of extensive rain. In terms of conditions around the rest of the country tomorrow, Perth is heading for a top of 20, Adelaide a few showers and a top of 18, Hobart is heading for 21, we've got Melbourne heading for 20 degrees, a few showers there too. Canberra 18, again showers, and Brisbane is heading for a partly cloudy top of 25. Back to New South Wales, we've got widespread rain and the chance of a thunderstorm in western and central areas. It will clear in the southwest later in the day. As for the southeast, showers along the coast, increasing to areas of rain, more likely in the afternoon. Broken Hill heading for 22 degrees, Dubbo 19, Newcastle 23 and Nowra 22. Across the suburbs of Sydney, showers are increasing tomorrow. They're most likely in the afternoon or evening. We have a chance of a thunderstorm around that time too, but for the morning, it's looking mostly partly cloudy. So Penrith is heading for a top of 24 degrees, Campbelltown 22, the same in Bankstown, Parramatta, and Terry Hills is heading for 20 degrees. For Sydney tomorrow, the maximum is 22, the minimum is 14, and taking a look at the week ahead. So showers increasing tomorrow. Then on Saturday, as I've said, up to 50 millimetres in the rain gauge. On Sunday, we could see 35 millimetres. Then Monday, this is when we get mostly sunny conditions, so we're all holding out for that. Tuesday, partly cloudy, and then on Wednesday and Thursday, we do have a shower or two. Thursday, up to 8 millimetres. In Sydney's west, those falls over the weekend could be even heavier. As I've said, on Sunday, we are looking at up to 70 millimetres, so very significant amounts in the rain gauges, but I'll be back with more weather details in half an hour.
These are tonight's top stories. The rain came and it kept on coming. Now it is official. Sydney has just marked its wettest year ever recorded, and there's still more deluge to come. Police investigating the Optus data breach make their first arrest. A man taken into custody in Sydney, accused of using data stolen from Optus customers in a blackmail scam. And 2 decades behind bars, a Maitland man sentenced over the brutal killing of his girlfriend, who he believed was a demon. Now here's a record only the Ducks will be celebrating. Sydney has officially had its wettest year since measurements began. That was 164 years ago. And while we're all just praying for a little ray of sunshine, sadly the forecasters say there is plenty more rain to come.
Rain nearly washed away Waterloo. Flash flooding, waterlogging Sydney streets, saturating an already soaked state.
Saturday is likely to be our danger day for Sydney and surrounding areas.
It's now officially Sydney's wettest year in 164 years of records, smashing the 1950 yearly rainfall total of 2,194 millimetres, and it's only October. Washout in the west, causing river rapids at Parramatta Wharf as the deluge collected debris, while campers at the Bathurst 1000 have had to make friends with mud. In the past 24 hours, the SES has received 367 calls for help and have carried out 5 flood rescues.
Some places in the far west of the state have already observed rainfall about 2 to 3 times what they typically see in the month of October.
There are 45 flood warnings current across New South Wales, with the areas around Forbes, Bathurst, Gunnedah and Warren of most concern. Locals say the Hawkesbury River here at Richmond has risen 3 metres just this morning, with the Nepean River also on flood watch for minor to moderate flooding, but levels aren't expected to reach those seen earlier this year. The government's plans to raise Warragamba Dam trashed by locals who have been flooded 4 times in 18 months.
Community here are outraged. It would make much more sense to pre-release water slowly in a controlled manner.
500 SES volunteers are preparing for a weekend of heavy rain, flash flooding and damaging winds, police wanting to avoid any further tragedies.
Those families are traumatised and extended communities are traumatised.
Please make sensible decisions.
Follow alerts and don't take risks as the conditions can deteriorate rapidly. Sarah Naven for 10 News First.
A teenager charged with trying to blackmail victims of the Optus data breach has been granted bail. His arrest today was the first by a special federal police task force examining the largest leak of consumer information in Australia's history.
This 19-year-old being walked from his Sydney home this morning isn't the Optus hacker, but federal police allege he pretended to be in scam text messages sent to 93 of the telco's 10,000 customers whose data was published online.
And we would allege that the offender was working their way through the list.
The message it's claimed he sent reads in part, Optus has not responded to our demand of the $1 million ransom. As such, your information will be sold and used for fraudulent activity within 2 days or until a payment of $2,000 is made. His undoing may have been the bank account listed, which police allege belongs to his younger brother.
So the text messages started to be sent last week, and we would allege would have continued had we not taken the action that we took today.
The accused scammer could face up to 10 years in jail if he's convicted. The good news, it appears no one who received the text message fell for it, so no money was transferred. The bad news, it's proof victims of the Optus hack are vulnerable.
And we are aggressively pursuing all lines of inquiry to identify those behind the attack.
As the government proposes new laws
to try and reduce the impact of this data breach.
Empowering all telcos to hand over the driver's licences, passports and Medicare numbers of hacked customers to financial institutions and the government to stop their identities being stolen.
And they need to ensure that the information that they get is destroyed when it's no longer required.
A protection many Optus customers wish had been afforded to their data. Daniel Sutton for 10 News First.
A Maitland man who murdered his young girlfriend because he thought she was a demon has been jailed for at least 13 years. Jordan Brodie Miller never denied killing Emerald Wardle, but argued that he was suffering from mental illness at the time due to his illicit drug use.
Sunflowers were Emerald Wardle's favourite flower. Dozens of them were in the courtroom today as a judge sentenced the 18-year-old's boyfriend, Jordan Brodie Miller, to 20 years behind bars for her murder.
We want to now start the healing process where we can celebrate her young life.
He'll spend at least 13 years in jail, having already admitted to strangling his girlfriend in her home near Maitland in 2020.
Emerald was the most amazing young, vibrant woman.
Miller had already admitted to killing Ms Wardle. At the time, he thought she was a demon and he was under a curse. He later pleaded not guilty to murder, claiming he had been suffering from a drug-induced psychosis caused by cannabis and LSD. But a jury rejected claims his actions were caused by undiagnosed schizophrenia. The court was also read a letter written by Miller for his girlfriend's family. "I loved Emerald," it said. "It breaks my heart every day knowing she is gone. I can only describe it as living in a nightmare that I can never awake from." Miller will be 33 when he becomes eligible for parole. The judge acknowledged he is remorseful for what he's done, but told the court taking drugs is never an excuse for violent conduct.
2 young lives have been ruined, really, and 2 families have a lifetime impact.
Miller can apply for release in 2033. Taylor Ryan for 10 News First.
Brittany Higgins has been cross-examined by accused rapist Bruce Lerriman's lawyers for the first time. The defence saying that they have found discrepancies in Miss Higgins' story. The focus, a white dress worn on the night of the alleged assault that Miss Higgins said had been stored away for 6 months.
Brittany Higgins wept from the witness box as she relived the night of her alleged rape, watching herself struggle to put her shoes back on as she passed through Parliament security. The white dress Ms Higgins was wearing on the night was handed to police some 2 years later, telling the court, "I kept it under my bed in a plastic bag for a good 6 months, untouched, uncleaned." The defence questioned Ms Higgins' account under cross-examination, showing a photo from May 15, 2019 of Ms Higgins wearing the dress. She told Steve Wybrow she was wrong about the timing. When pressed on why she wore it after the alleged assault, she said she was reclaiming her agency. On April 1st, Ms Higgins met with Minister Linda Reynolds and her then Chief of Staff Fiona Brown in the Minister's office. It's during this meeting she says the Minister apologised to her and showed some general empathy. She alleges the conversation then moved to the election and what Ms Higgins intended to do about the allegation. Ms Higgins told the court, "My interpretation of that was that if I raised it with police, there were going to be problems." This could theoretically be perceived in the broader public sense as a political problem for the Liberal Party with women. On the 8th of April, Ms Higgins met with the Sexual Assault Unit in Canberra. The Prime Minister called the federal election on the 11th of April. That Saturday, the 13th, Brittany Higgins wrote to police informing them she would not be proceeding with her complaint against Mr Lerriman. The court heard this was because it became really apparent my job was on the line, so I towed the party line. She quit in January 2021. Under cross-examination, Ms Higgins was accused of using 2 media interviews in February 2021 to ruin the Liberal Party. She told the court that wasn't her intention, that she had loved the Liberal Party. Stella Todorovic for 10 News First.
Australia's first dedicated space weather forecasting centre opened today, and it is out of this world. Space weather, mostly driven by the sun, has the potential to wreak havoc with our daily lives here on Earth. It is hoped the data will help industries better prepare and respond to these weather events.
Could cause currents to go through the earth and through our power systems, which may end up in a blackout. It will impact satellites, so we use satellites for communication, for phone calls.
The centre has been built in Adelaide's Space Agency hub. Well, just ahead, a century-long shipwreck mystery has been solved right off our coast. In sport, Nathan Cleary ready to throw a challenge to Daly Cherry Evans in the competition for World Cup spots. And Tim Payne makes his return to first-class cricket. A group of mates out fishing have helped unlock a century-old shipwreck mystery. Their underwater camera revealed the final resting place of the sailing ship Glenbank, which capsized in a cyclone off the WA coast.
This is the moment a team of divers solve a 111-year-old marine mystery.
This one right here, that is absolutely massive. Beautiful dive.
Glenbank was on her way to the UK with a load of WA copper ore when she capsized during a cyclone in 1911. More than 20 crew members died, just one survived. Her final resting place uncovered in the Dampier Marine Park in WA's north by a group of friends out fishing.
Johnny loves underwater cinematography, so he had an underwater camera that he lowered down to the bottom, and that's when they actually picked up that it was a wreck. But this spot is really hard to dive. It's in almost 40 metres of water.
The identity of the 73-metre ironbark sailing ship confirmed during the filming of Shipwreck Hunters Australia, which has just launched on Disney+.
There's no doubt about it. It's the Glenbank.
Oh, so good!
Telling the story of Glenbank's lone survivor, a 22-year-old Finnish seaman.
He managed to swim 15 nautical miles during a cyclone, and during that swim he was attacked by a shark, and then he made it to shore and he had to survive on this little rocky reef for 3 days in 45-degree heat. I mean, a testament to the will to live.
The film crew showed their discovery to his grandson, now in his 80s.
So that's really amazing.
The waters off the WA coastline are a treasure trove of shipwrecks. It's estimated they're the final resting place of about 1,600. So far, only a third of them have been discovered.
When everybody thinks about shipwrecks, they think about treasure, but we left everything on the seafloor, and the real treasure that we got were these amazing survival stories, the footage that we managed to capture.
Amelia Simpson for 10 News First.
Jaleesa's back and she's got the latest news from the sports desk. Jaleesa, Penrith's captain, has defended some of their more controversial celebrations.
Yeah, he certainly has, Sandra. Penrith halfback Nathan Cleary has laughed off talk the Premiers are arrogant following their second consecutive grand final win, preferring to focus on his fight to unseat Daly Cherry Evans as the halfback of the Kangaroos at this month's World Cup.
Obviously Daly's a great player and he's proven that over a long period of time. He's obviously the incumbent as well, so yeah, it's healthy competition.
The Kangaroos fly out for Manchester tonight with their opening game against Fiji on Sunday week. Steve Smith admits he has no idea if his non-selection against the West Indies overnight will impact his hopes of a World Cup spot. With Tim David and Cameron Green preferred in Game 1, Smith says he would have liked to play but was told the decision was purely for team balance.
Of course, I'd always like to play, yeah. The reasons I got told was they wanted 6 bowling options with obviously Mitch Marsh not bowling and Stoinis not here.
Marcus Stoinis admits he's proud of his fellow WA all-rounder Cameron Green, despite being the man most likely to be replaced in the World Cup squad should he not prove his fitness against England next week. Will Pukowski didn't get out of the blocks in Victoria's first Sheffield Shield match of the season. The opener removed for a 4-ball duck by Harry Conway, who was on his South Australian debut. Tim
Great
Payne
length from Harry Conway, just leaves Pukowski and he knew straight away. Easy catch for Alex Carey. And
it's getting a lot of players out, that ball. Big Harry, up and about early.
Tim Payne didn't fare much better in his first professional match since he was stood down as Test captain almost a year ago. The 37-year-old made just 6. 18 months ago, Clayton Douglas was doing the hard yards as a jumps jockey. Now he has a runner in the world's richest race on turf. Giga Kick is taking Douglas on a dream ride, and he's adamant his star sprinter won't be making up the numbers in next week's $15 million Everest.
Clayton Douglas admits there'll be a few sleepless nights this week.
It's unreal. I'm sort of still pinching myself now to think that, I'm going to be rubbing shoulders with the best of the best.
3-year-old Giga Kick is the first unbeaten sprinter to contest the Everest. With his fighting finish in the Danehill, enough to convince slot holder James Harron to take a punt on a runner he believes could be the X Factor.
To have a horse like him, he's making everyone know who I am, and he's just a natural athlete, this horse. He does everything right. He's got a great temperament. We're not going to be there just to make up the numbers. We think the horse is a live hope.
From generations of racing stock, Douglas made his name as a jumps jockey, twice winning the Grand Annual.
Gold medals, ZM! Oh, gold medals!
After a decade in the saddle, he packed it in to take out his trainer's ticket just 18 months ago. That time has had its challenges, with his very public split from fiancée Jamie Carr. But things are on the up.
Yeah, it's really good. Obviously, I work really hard of what I've got, and the horses have been my main priority. You know, it's really good to get up and think that I've got a horse that's unbeaten and we're off to the Everest. It's outstanding.
For that, he can thank Gigakick, or Connor, as he's better known at home.
So when he came in, we just knew him as the scissor kick gelding. So I was saying to everyone, oh, he needs a fighter's name then, like he needs something strong. And the only fighter that I know of is Conor McGregor, so I named him Connor.
Gigakick will have good company on his trip to Sydney. Meet Frankie, the stable pony, who will also be making a name for himself in the harbour city. You better behave, buddy.
He's been a good little addition to the stable. He's Gigakick's friend and he's a fair attraction, to be honest.
Katie Price for 10 News First.
As if driving in the wild weather at Bathurst wasn't hard enough, the front wheel of Kai Allen's Commodore came loose at the top of the mountain in the Super 2 practice and went racing down Conrad Straight on its own.
Should we take bets here on where this thing's going to end up?
Please
Look at it go.
Take caution. There is
so
a
hopefully it's going to find a little spot over here and arrest itself. No, it's going to keep going.
It stopped after around 700 metres. Lucky the only victims were a couple of advertising signs. Play of the day to Gigakick's pony.
I agree. That should have won. All right, thanks, Jaleesa. Catch you tomorrow. Stay with us after the break. We've got the very latest on the soaking rains. Hello again. It's time for one final update on the weather. The falls have formed this line along the coast and they've remained pretty constant throughout the afternoon and evening. In terms of what's driven today's record-breaking rain, we have this cold front, the light blue spiky line, also this trough, the dotted green line above it. They are pushing across the state, but you can also see these winds, the yellow arrows, they're bringing tropical moisture into the state, and that humid air is colliding with the trough and the cold front, causing this next period of extensive rain. Around the state tomorrow, we can expect widespread rain and the chance of a thunderstorm in western and central areas. It will clear in the southwest a bit later in the day. As for the southeast, showers along the coast, increasing to areas of rain towards the afternoon. Broken Hill, they're 22 degrees, Dubbo heading for 19, then Newcastle 23 and Nowra 22. Across the suburbs of Sydney, we have showers increasing tomorrow. They're most likely in the afternoon and evening. Also the chance of a thunderstorm around that time too, but for the morning it is looking partly cloudy. So we've got Richmond there heading for 23 degrees, Penrith is heading for 24, then 22 the top in Campbelltown, Bankstown and Parramatta. Now taking a look at the week ahead, so those showers increasing on Friday. Saturday we could see up to 50 millimetres. Then Sunday, rain, 35 millimetres. Monday we do get mostly sunny conditions. And taking a look at Sydney's west, we do have up to 70 millimetres forecast for Saturday, so very significant falls in Sydney's west over the weekend as well. So Sandra, 2022, it is officially the wettest year on record, and I'm afraid we do have more to come. Sadly, we do. All right, Paris, we can't say we haven't been warned, but nevertheless, we need flippers, a snorkel, goggles, you name it, everything, an umbrella. Fingers crossed we get through tomorrow. Stay well. Cheers.